So Rob, I don't know what it was. Maybe a week ago, I was looking around on the internet. I was looking at my RSS feed actually, and I came across this Sega thing, and I thought it was a joke at first. I thought it was like an elaborate troll because Sega supposedly announced, and it turns out it's true, the world's smallest replica Game Gear. There's actually a series of 4 handheld games that are $50 each, and the screen is, if I'm not mistaken, 1.12 inches diagonally. And I thought, you know what? You people must just hate anybody with bad eyesight. And each of these little consoles, it's a little bit, I guess, like what Nintendo's done with the NES and the SNES, but these are tiny, 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 and they each only have 4 games on them. And I actually read subsequently that they were originally intended to only have 1 game on them. And then someone's like, "Well, that's a really bad deal." So let's cram four games onto this incredibly small screen. They come in 4 colors, and if you buy all 4, you get a giant, clunky magnifying glass attachment so that you can actually see what's going on in Sonic or whatever else the games happen to be.
This is so... Did you know what? Firstly, the fact that they've split them over 4. There's only 16 games across these 4 consoles. Like, $50. These games are what? 20, 25, 30 years old. There's no reason that all 16 of those... I mean, I've got an SD card sat within arm's reach here that's like 8 gig, and it's basically got every game ever created before, like the N64 on it.
I have a micro SD card that's like 128 gigabytes, right? I mean, that holds hours of 4K video. It's crazy.
Right, like that. You can fit all of these old games on like such a small amount of space, and yet they're charging $50 for these with 4 games, and each one basically only has like 1 good game. Like, it is outrageous that they think it. Collectors will buy these because they do look cool. Like, I can totally see the appeal. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'd take one if somebody was going to give me one, but there's no way I would pay this much money for this stuff.
I can't imagine that these are really very playable. I mean, they are literally the size they fit in the palm of your hand. These are not like, I think it would be hard to actually, put 2 sets of fingers on them on the left and right sides because the thing is so small.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I struggle with I've got a little 8-bit do controller, right. One of the small ones. And even that, like, I kind of struggle with. And I think these are even a little bit smaller than the one I've got. And I'm thinking, I mean, I watched a movie once on an iPod, not an iPod video, one of the smaller ones. Oh. And I think the screen is about the size of this. And I watched this movie like 2 hours or something in my mate's car while we were waiting at the airport for someone. And like, my eyes afterwards were hurting. So I can't imagine what it's like for this, where you're like really, really concentrating. It must be horrible.
Oh, like Sonic. Sonic is a fast-moving game. I don't know how you would even concentrate and be able to focus on what was happening on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, this has got to be the dumbest mini console that's come out so far.
Yeah, it is kind of outrageous. So I don't know. I certainly did not order one. I'm not going to order one, and I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they do. Sony did their thing. What was it, like a year and a half ago? And they did a replica of the PS1, I think it was.
Yes.
And I had one on order, and then thank goodness they gave reviewers advance copies of them because it got completely panned, and I was able to cancel my order in time because they originally were pretty expensive. They were over $100, I think, like maybe $150. And by the time I last saw them being sold at deep discount, they were like $30 or $40 or something like that.
Oh yeah, like I've seen them in the UK for as cheap as like £15, and wow. Like you say, I think in the UK they were maybe £70 or £80 or something.
Okay.
Even at £15, I thought, no, I don't really want it, and I just left it. Like, even at that cheaper price, I was like, no, I'm not interested because they did such a bad job with it.
Yeah, it really goes to show that there's you really have to put some thought and effort into what the game experience is going to be, even on these older games. And I think Nintendo's done a good job of it. I think if you really want to play old games, one good way is just to emulate them. I actually I have a Game Vice for my iPad Mini, and I put Dolphin on it using AltStore. And so I put a bunch of old games on there that we had ripped off the discs from the Wii. Now, I don't really suggest emulating Wii games, because Wii games require, a lot of them at least, require the particular controls of the Wiimote. And so it's not a great experience on an iPad. But if something uses the classic controller, or it's like a GameCube game, those are all kind of fun on there. And it's, the chips are powerful enough in an iPad Mini to really run them completely smoothly. And they even will upscale to like 1080p.
Yeah, I look at the Game Gear, these mini Game Gear, and I think the Nintendo, the NES Mini or the SNES Mini or whatever, like both of those sold because those consoles were popular. Like, I think in my entire life I've seen one Game Gear in real life, with somebody physically owning it, like when it was actually
I owned one.
Of course you did. But like
Jennifer threw it out.
This wasn't like a popular console. I mean, it used like
it wasn't.
10,000 batteries or whatever you had to put in the back of it. And like nobody, the battery technology and the screen technology just wasn't good enough for portable at this point. And like nobody's looking back on the Game Gear going, oh yeah, good times. Like, because there wasn't anything exciting about it.
No, it wasn't great. And, Nintendo has not only done a good job of making the interface work well with those classic consoles, but they've also put a ton of games on them. So there's a lot of options there and a lot of fan favorites. There's some, not so great games on there too, but they do a much better job of picking a good library of games.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I won't be buying these. You won't be buying these, so I'll keep an eye on eBay and wait to see if somebody's getting rid of them for really cheap.
maybe for like $10, I would do it just for the novelty of trying to play a game on a device that small.
Yeah, I might pick one up if I see them cheap. Although I don't even think you can buy them in the UK, to be honest. So
really, I didn't go much beyond looking at it, realizing it was real, and seeing how incredibly small it was. Beyond that, it was like, is it available? I don't know. I don't really care. So,
yeah. I mean, the console I got my eye on is PS5, but no pricing yet.
We're recording too early because the PS5 event got delayed from last week to this week, and as we record this, it is happening on June 11th, which is tomorrow, and I plan to watch that.
Yes.
I assume you do too.
Oh yes. So 25 hours from now.
Oh, I was going to ask. I didn't remember what time it was. So it's like just over a day from now. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 25 hours and counting. Well, I'm not counting. I will go to sleep and I'll do other stuff, but
just don't sit around counting.
Right. I mean, there's no point in talking about it too much, but it sounds like it's going to be pretty good because they're kind of focusing on games, and there's been a few leaks of stuff on Amazon where it's like showing different publishers. There's one from Rockstar, which who knows what that is. Like maybe it's Red Dead for PS5. Could be a bunch of stuff, but like you, I will be there. Normally as well, these things are on like 3 o'clock in the morning my time. So for once, they've actually got it on at a decent time, so I can actually watch it.
Yeah, well, speaking of decent schedules, WWDC has yet to have a schedule, and I'm very curious how they're going to handle this. Whether they're going to time shift it at all to, I don't know, make it daylight out. The problem is it's going to be nighttime somewhere, right? I mean, you really can't. Maybe things will get played twice, maybe on like a 12-hour schedule or something. But for the big live events, the keynote and maybe the State of the Union, it's going to be in the middle of the night for somebody. It won't be in the middle of the night for me. It probably will be like midday, but it's going to be interesting, especially at Mac Stories with everybody spread out. Obviously Federico's in Rome, and I'm as close to California of anybody on the team, and it's just going to make for an interesting schedule for all of us. I think it's going to be very much a me working from like 11 in the morning till very late at night each day, and then just getting up and doing it all over again. It's just going to be different from my normal schedule, which I'm kind of an early morning person, so not getting going until almost lunchtime is pretty unusual for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you say, that you say about the time shifting and stuff, but I think in a lot of ways, like the time that they pick, and they normally do this for their other events as well, it is a fairly reasonable time to it doesn't cover everyone, like it never can. You know, but you sort of get, it's around lunchtime in the US, depending on where you are, and then you can get to the UK and Europe, and it's at like 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. So like they're covering quite a lot there, because I think you shift it further, and then like it's too late for Europe, but then maybe it's like it's early enough for say Japan or Australia or something like that. So my guess, and probably yours is as well, that they're going to do it at the time they normally do, which is 6 o'clock my time. I guess it's like 10 o'clock California time.
Yeah, 10 o'clock is typically when the keynote starts, and then usually the subsequent days the various sessions start around 9 a.m. Pacific, so about an hour earlier. It's I think you're right. I mean, it does do a pretty good job of at least covering North America, South America, and Europe. But I guess my only thing is that I'm looking at this from a very particular perspective, which is my own, which is, of course, all that really matters. And that is going to make for some very late nights working. And it's just going to be a long week. It always is a long week.
You've never sounded more American than you did right there.
I know. I was doing that on purpose, Rob. I'm very aware of what that sounds like. But it is going to, regardless of when the time hits, the reality is that week is a busy week for us anyway. And it's just going to be a matter of whether those hours are in the morning and afternoon, or whether they're in the afternoon and the evening, I suppose.
Yeah. It's nice for those of us who don't go, because it's like the first year we don't feel like we're missing out on like the parties and stuff. Obviously, it sucks at the parties, and you can't go and all that stuff. But for those of us that never go, this is great, because I'm like, well, I'm not missing out on anything this year. There's nothing to sort of feel like I'm missing out on, because we're all just sat in front of computers watching the videos.
Right. And in a way, after the first day with the keynote and the State of the Union, which is the geekier, more in-depth technical stuff for developers, it doesn't really matter, I don't think, whether stuff is live, because Apple always puts out those videos to be watched whenever you want. I mean, they're always just there on the developer website. So they could just start putting them up on a schedule, like, a couple at 9 in the morning and a couple at 11 in the morning and a couple at 2 in the afternoon, whatever it happens to be. And then they're just there, and people can kind of watch them in real time if they want, or they can do like everybody else does who goes to WWDC, gets caught up in all the events and doesn't go to as many sessions as they had hoped, and then ends up watching them when they get home anyway. So, I think that'll be everybody will be kind of in the same boat in terms of that aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm looking forward to it anyway. I like watching a good keynote. I don't always. Sometimes I'll watch the State of the Union. I won't normally watch it live, because it's sort of getting a bit later into the evening for me then. But I'll normally watch it the next day. It really depends. Like, if the next day I see a lot of people tweeting about the State of the Union, like, oh, this was interesting, then maybe I'll sit there and watch it.
Yeah, for me, the State of the Union is always tricky, because, they pack so much into the keynote. We are usually very busy for, 6-7 hours after that, writing a whole bunch of stories. And if I stop then in the middle of that to watch the State of the Union, one, I've got mental overload at that point of additional facts. And two, it just delays me getting the stories out. So I think what I'm going to do is watch the keynote, stop, write a whole bunch, then do a podcast with Federico, which we have to do early enough because, 4 o'clock my time, which is around the time that probably the State of the Union will be ending, is 11 p.m. his time. So we got to do it at some point before midnight, hopefully. And then finish that, write some more, edit a show, put it out the next day, and then start all over again with, I think the subsequent days will be easier only because we'll be able to record before things get going in California. And because we're doing a bunch of extra shows. That's kind of a spoiler of the what's going on at Mac Stories WWDC.
Oh,
not officially announced anywhere, but on Ruminate. But we're doing some extra episodes. So as a result, I think we're going to spend those other days recording early in the day, and then spending the rest of the day watching sessions, writing, and all that. It's just you run into hard issues like just hours in the day and people to actually type the letters into the computer and make them show up on the internet. But we've done it a bunch in the past, so I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. One of the things it's almost like wait until after WWDC to think about this, but
yeah, depending
on how this goes, I wonder if they'll move a lot more to online next year when, God, fingers crossed, we're allowed to travel in a year's time. Like, assuming everything's like relatively quote unquote back to normal, I'm hoping they sort of potentially take some of what they're doing this year, which is remote, and sort of it makes it less important to go there, so that because it's a lot of money. Like, if you're in the US, it's expensive enough, but like if you're traveling from anywhere outside of the US, you're probably doubling the price on that, on flights and everything else. So I'd be interested to know if they take a lot of this remote stuff they're doing this year and push that into next year.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think that where it'll make a difference potentially is with the labs, because that's something that historically you could only do in person. And I assume they're going to have some solution for that. That's not something that impacts me directly, but I know it. It's a big critical aspect of WWDC for a lot of developers, and I hope that there's an online component of that and it persists after this year. I do, though, hope too that there is still an in-person version of it, only because I don't know. I think that a lot of important connections are made there. I do think it sucks that it's expensive and that not everybody can afford to go, and that people don't always go. But I do feel like it is beneficial if you can go, and it would be a shame if that was completely gone. Though I think what we'll probably see, and I hope we'll see from this year, is that this will be the big experiment. And if aspects of it are successful, that maybe those elements of it will stick around, just so that more people can participate and feel part of it, even if they aren't able to get to California. So we'll see. I mean, I'll miss it if we never go to WWDC again. And that's partly selfish, because where I see a lot of people I know only once a year, but it also played like a really big role in me kind of getting to where I am now, working at Mac Stories. And I feel like that every year there are people like that who, one developer makes a connection with another developer, and before you know it, they're working on a really cool app together, or, business transactions happen, or people just become friends, for that matter. I mean, there are a lot of people live in communities where they don't necessarily have a lot of developer friends nearby, especially if they're working in small groups or by themselves. And it's nice to have the ability to meet other like-minded people once a year, and it'd be a shame if that goes away. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I'm trying to be. I've been thinking sort of about WWDC. I don't feel like there's been a huge amount of rumors in terms of iOS is generally the one I really care about. Like, as much as I use the Mac more, I don't really care. They could just not update the Mac. I couldn't care. Well, just leave it as it is. It does what I need it to do for work. But like for iOS, like I don't feel like there's been a huge amount of rumors. There's been a few bits a couple of leaks that were probably fake, and I don't really know what I want. Like, I'm not really sure what I'm looking for. Like, there was the rumor about the redesigned home screen, with widgets and hiding app icons and stuff, which I really want. Like, ideally, just copy exactly what Android's got. Like, I can put icons on the home screen and hide everything else. Like, that's all I want to do. But I don't really know what else I'm expecting, which is kind of nice to just sort of go into it and be like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. I don't know either. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I do think the ARM Max could be a really interesting thing that shakes up a lot of aspects of what developers are doing. I think that there's plenty. I always feel like there's plenty of room to improve all the OSs, and I get excited about all the little details. So I'm hoping that we see some further refinements of like how the iPad works with multitasking and all that. And iOS, the iPhone itself, some things that are not iPad specific. Not as much that I'm wishing for there, but I really do think you're right. I think it is time to rethink the home screen. It would be nice to have something that allowed more live widgets on there that actually did something and provided some sort of information. I guess we'll see soon enough, but Apple has a way of throwing curveballs every year, so I'm sure there'll be a few of those as well. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that turned into a bit more of a WWDC show than I was expecting. We don't necessarily normally do predictions because we either don't line up with the dates or whatever. But I guess we're probably not going to be recording that week because you are going to be really busy.
I think I will be a little busy, but we will be back right after WWDC, I think.
No, that's good. And then we can talk about all the exciting things, and we will have had the PS5 event by then. Maybe they would have shown the console off. Who knows?
Oh, there'll be The Last of Us will be out, and the new expansion pack for Pokemon Sword and Shield too. So there's lots of things happening.
Yeah, I got an email today that my card is going to be charged tomorrow for my Last of Us pre-order. So that's nice because I got the big collector's editions coming Friday next week, hopefully.
Oh, nice. Well, that's cool. I'm looking forward to all these things. It's going to be an interesting summer. Kind of still semi-stuck at home here. So, I guess at least I'm going to be busy and occupied.
Yeah, definitely. So, cool. Well, I guess next time we speak, you will have done your busy week. I'm sure you'll still be catching up on various things. But we will be back. I guess it'll be 3 weeks now, which is fine. And yeah, we can record and go through all that stuff.
Sounds good. I'll talk to you then.
Cool. Speak to you later.